Hello and welcome to the Excel VBA Functions Series. In this video, we will check some VBA conversion functions. And let me start with one of the probably oldest, and let's put it here, convert functions. And these two functions are connected and are CHR and ASC. CHR stands for character. So CHR gets the character for a ASCII code, and ASCII code gets the code. So for example, let me put that in a message box. If we use ASC for letter A, we would get the ASCII code for that character, which is letter A, and the code is 65. Now you would say, why is this important? Well, it is important because computers use numbers for characters, and ASC was one of the first or the first standard for characters. So you can treat data from other sources, for example, and you can get the code if you need to work with the code. And I'll show you a couple of examples. The other function is CHR. So we've seen the code 65 is for letter A. So if we use CHR with a number, we could get the letter, right? Now, this has a number of applications. So for example, we could get, you see in Excel, we have rows with numbers, but columns with letters, right? So we could, for example, get the letter simply using the CHR for that column. So for example, let's set the column to columns 1. So the first column we know is letter A. We could get the letter for that column with, let's put it in a message box. So that would be CHR 64, because we know it starts at 65 plus call.column, which in this case is column 1. So it's going to give us the letter, let me comment this, it's going to give us the letter A, is column A. Column 1, so we are saying column 1, because we said here columns 1, is column A. This can be useful sometimes when we get, the column in a number and we want to have the column in letter, or the other way around. Well, usually it's from number to letter. So for example, if we are in, let's say, column 25, I don't know which letter it is, we could use this and it tells is column Y. But of course, this has a problem. It only works till letter C or set, right? It was just an example so that you see what we can do with CHR. I'll give you a couple of other examples. Now, if you are wondering how to get the column after column C, well, there's another way. Let me show you. It doesn't use any VBA function. It has nothing to do with this video, but I can show you. This could be getting the address. So col is the column. So that's an object for the whole column, but we are only interested in the first row of that column, rows 1, or in any row in that column, and then we can get the address. And if we set this to false, we will not get the dollar symbol for absolute reference for a column or a cell. This will give the, let me comment this one now. And this was, we know it was column Y. Now it says Y1 because it's actually referencing the first cell in that column. We can remove that with, we can get the left. We've seen those string functions, or we can replace simply the one. We know it's always going to be a 1 because it's rows 1. So we can say, I don't want to have the 1. And so we can get any column. So let's say we want to know which letter has the column 125. So it is DU, or 1125. Imagine you're working. So it's AQG. Anyway, that's just something interesting, I guess. Another way we can use CHR is, for example, to add letters from A to Z to the worksheet or to somewhere. I've used that, for example, in the word search generator. So after generating a puzzle, I needed to fill the gaps with random letters. So I was using the random function we covered in the previous video. And together with the CHR function. Let me show you. And if you haven't seen that video, I'm gonna leave the link up here, is the word search generator. We could, for example, let me just add the letters to this column. We could add the letters, of course, to random places in a word search matrix. But just to do it as a simple example, I'm going to show you how to add. Let's say we want to add letters, capital letters start at 65. So from 65 to, let's say, till 92, for example. And then in every cell, we're going to have, so that for the row, that would be n minus 64, comma, column 1. We're going to have the letter. So we use CHR for the code. Now, if we don't need to see this box now. Let me run this. So you see now we got here all the letters of the alphabet in that column. So yeah, a little more, two other characters that are coming afterwards. So here's the list for ASCII characters between 0 and 127. That was the initial ASCII standard. Then it was actually extended to characters between 128 and 255. That's the ANSI. Anyway, the first 31 are control characters. So they actually belong to some controls like the backspace, the horizontal tab, and things like that. So that's also useful. You can access those via the CHR. You see also from 32 we start to have the space and different characters. Then we have numbers, we have letters, and so on. So another useful thing, and by the way, you can find this in my blog. I'm gonna leave the link in the description so you can get this and the other one. One interesting thing also that I've used quite a few times is that we can get the double quotes with the code 34. And this is useful because sometimes we need to have a string. Let me probably show you an example. Let's say we want to have my string and it is something, and then we need to have something in quotes right inside the string. So one way to do it is to have CHR34, which is the number for the double quotes. And then we can have here our, let's say, quoted text. Then again, we add quotes. That's a way, it's a bit long, but it's the way to, one of the ways to do it. And if I display this in a message box, now you'll see we don't need this anymore. We get a string with a quoted word or text inside. So that's one way to do it. So that's another application of the CHR function. And actually, well, tell you, we can also do this in this other way. And I've used this in many different things because sometimes we need to have double quotes inside the string. So this would also work, right? Triple double quotes or something like that. Okay, so let's have a look at some other functions. We have also val is one I often use, and there is also str. So val is converting an expression to a value. Let's say, for example, we have this expression, and this could be an ID 123A. But in this case, let's say we want to get the value of this ID, just the number value. We could do that with val. If we use val for that number, it would get just the number. So this can be useful sometimes. 1, 2, 3. Of course, if we don't have val, it will show everything, right? It's treated as a string. Now, a string, on the other hand, is doing the opposite, which is usually not that useful. But let's say we have a number, 1, 2, 3, and we want to treat it as a string because we want to apply some string functions. So we could show it with string as a string instead of a number. And we could also convert it. So there are two other functions which are CStr, convert the data type. And this, regardless of how the declaration was up here, we haven't declared this variable, but imagine we have declared it. This would convert the data type to a string. Now, the other way I use often value is to compare data from different sources. And this could be data in the worksheet. So let's imagine we have the score, and then we have here, let me add a column, a score in points, and it's basically the same, but with PTS or something. Yeah, it could be PTS, or it could be something in millimeters, centimeters, and you have mm, cm, but you want to just get the the number, and you want to compare these two columns. Let's say you want to compare this. If you do it as is, so let me display that in a message box. Range, it was C2 against range D2. This is gonna as is gonna give you, it's gonna be false, yeah, right? C2 D2, it doesn't match because this one has something else. But we are interested only in the number. Then if we say compare that to the value in C2, and notice that I didn't write value, but you can write value. It by default is getting the value, not the format or any other property of the cell. So by default it's gonna get the value. But we also add the value, the val function here. And now in this case is gonna say true, because yeah, now the value of this cell, it's the same as here. But we have other functions. We have functions, let me put here, I've shown you before, CStr to convert to string, or CInt convert to an integer, convert to a long. There are a number of functions that can convert a data type to another data type. So for example, if we use C, let's convert to an integer, the one that we had selected was the date. If we want, or we could actually convert that to a string, because when working with dates, time, for dates we always have to use the data type, but for time we can use a string. And if we want to make sure we get that as a string, we could use the convert to a string. We can also use convert to an integer. For example, for this column here, if we want to have the boolean here, true or false, as a number, usually false would be 0, true would be 1. If we want to convert that, we can have that true is -1, so we could have the absolute value for that, to show that it's true. And if we select false with convert to an integer, it would be 0. So this would be a way also to get that in a numerical way. Now, another interesting thing we can do, and I've done that a few times, is to convert a date into a number to store it in a database. For example, let's say we want to store dates, and we cannot store them with the slash here. Some databases we need to store them as a number, so we could do that, for example, but in this case we would use CLng. And if I select that and do, we get a number that represents this date, right? Because it's the number of, well, it's from a starting point in time. Starting date is the number of days. Then we could so we could put that into a numerical variable. So our date as a number, let's call it. I didn't declare, but this one could be declared, of course, as a long, because we are changing the converting to a long. Then we could get the date back using another conversion function, which is CDate. So then we could get the real date, or whatever you want to call it, with CDate again with the date number. So this would be useful, as I said, if you want to store it in a database or in a place where only numbers can be that only accepts numbers, and then you want to retrieve that as a date. So, and there are a few other C functions, conversion functions starting with C for each of the data types. Now, there are also some VBA conversion functions starting with format. And this is different than the format function itself, or number format method that I have often used to change the format of the data in the worksheet. So format, for example, we have format number, we have format date and time. I believe there are a few other, but the format number is one I've used before, and it allows to, so let's say we have a number here, 3 with decimals. It allows to fnum, let's call formatted number, to format the number according to a different number of parameters. So first of all, we need to put the number expression here. Then we can set the number of digits after the decimal, like with some other VBA functions. But this one combines everything in one function. So we could say I want to have it with one decimal only. Then here it's asking if we want to include the leading digits and a number of other things. You may want to, for example, this one here is putting the negative numbers in parentheses if set to true. So we could want to do that. And um, this is a number I just put here, but we could be applying that to a list of numbers in the worksheet, of course. So for example, this one, if I display it in a message box and I comment this here, is showing the number, our number here with one decimal. It is, if it would be negative, it would show, because I set this to true, it would show that in parentheses, for example, and yeah, and there are a few other similar VBA functions to convert an expression, in this case a number, to a different format. So these are probably the most useful VBA conversion functions. Thanks for watching.